I met Lily on a rainy Thursday in March. One of those evenings that doesn't feel like it's meant to matter, but somehow ends up changing your life. I was 28, just getting my footing in a new architecture firm, working long hours and eating too many frozen dinners. She was 25, a teacher fresh off a cross-country move, sitting alone at a mutual friend's birthday dinner I almost skipped because of a deadline. She wore this faded denim jacket and had a quiet confidence about her, the kind of presence that doesn't try to take up the room, but still does. We sat across from each other at a crowded, dimly lit restaurant table, squeezed between conversations and candlelight. Our first exchange wasn't even that interesting. I think we started with something dumb like arguing over who made better coffee, Seattle or New York. But there was something about the way she smiled when she disagreed. It was the kind of smile that said, "I'll let you be wrong, just this once." We talked the whole night. Somehow we ended up outside when most of the group had gone home, both pretending we weren't freezing while she finished her wine and I offered her my coat, which she refused. She said she didn't like borrowing things unless she planned to return them. That line stuck with me. 2 weeks later, we had our first proper date. A month after that, I was leaving a toothbrush at her place. A year in, we moved into a one-bedroom together in a creaky but cozy building with uneven floors and terrible water pressure. We thought it was the best place on earth. Marriage came naturally. There wasn't some big, orchestrated proposal. We were walking home from a concert and stopped at this quiet bridge where she leaned against the railing and told me she couldn't imagine not doing this forever. I asked, "Should we get married then?" She looked at me like I'd just figured out the secret to life and said, "Yeah, let's do that." We got married in a public park surrounded by about 30 friends and family. My uncle officiated. Her sister baked the cake. It was chaotic, a little unorganized, and absolutely perfect. We both worked hard. Me with my building projects. Her with her third-grade classroom full of kids who worshipped her. At night we cooked together, or got lazy and ordered Thai. Weekends were for farmers markets, DIY furniture projects we never finished, and lazy Sundays spent reading on opposite sides of the couch with our legs tangled up. If someone had asked me back then what happiness looked like, I would have pointed to us. Not because it was flashy or picture-perfect, but because it felt real, steady, shared, like we were building something, not just a life, but a story we were both proud to write. We'd just begun what I thought would be the long, quiet, beautiful middle of our lives together. I always thought real love was supposed to be intense, dramatic, like the kind of stuff they write songs about. But with Lily, it was different. It wasn't loud. It was steady, predictable in the best possible way. And it made me realize how deeply satisfying it can be to share your life with someone who shows up for the ordinary every single day. After the wedding, we spent a few years just being us. No rush. No grand plan. We traveled when we could afford it, little trips mostly. Portland one fall, Savannah in the spring. We were never flashy, but we made memories out of everything. I still have a photo of Lily standing under a massive oak tree, hands on her hips, daring a squirrel to come closer. Her expression was half serious, half playful, like she was the queen of the park. That picture is still in my wallet, tucked behind my driver's license. Our first real home was a 2-bedroom ranch-style fixer-upper we bought about 6 years into our relationship. It had wood paneling from the 70s, a cracked driveway, and a water heater that sounded like it was preparing for launch, but it was ours. We spent the first month sleeping on a mattress on the living room floor while painting the walls and arguing over what shade of white the kitchen should be. Those early years in the house are some of my favorite memories. It was the kind of place where time felt like it moved a little slower. We had routines. Every Friday night we'd make homemade pizza, burnt edges, mismatched toppings, and all. Saturday mornings were for sleeping in, with Lily usually waking up first and sneaking out to grab coffee and pastries from the place down the street. I'd wake up to the smell of cinnamon and the sound of her humming in the kitchen. When we decided to start trying for kids, it wasn't some grand epiphany. It was more like a quiet agreement. A glance over breakfast. A casual "you think it's time?" followed by a smile and a nod. It took longer than we expected, about 2 years. There were disappointments along the way, quiet heartbreaks we didn't always know how to talk about. But when Lily got pregnant with Ellie, it was like the whole house exhaled. Lily became a mother the way the sun rises, gradually, then all at once. She read every book, joined every mom group, and still somehow managed to make it all seem effortless. Ellie was the kind of baby who stared at you like she already knew all your secrets. I remember holding her for the first time and feeling like the universe had finally handed me something I didn't know I was missing. 2 years later came Jake. Wild, impulsive Jake. From the moment he learned how to walk, he ran. Everywhere. Into furniture, through sprinklers, across playgrounds. Ellie was careful, thoughtful. Jake was chaos in the shape of a boy. But somehow, the four of us just clicked. Our house got louder, messier, and 10 times more joyful. These days, our life is full. I wake up to the sound of little feet on the hardwood floors and the smell of Lily's coffee brewing. I pack lunches while she wrangles the kids into shoes and jackets. Evenings are a blur of homework, bath time, and bedtime stories. Then it's just us, sitting on the couch, sometimes too tired to talk but always grateful for the quiet at the end of the day. It's not glamorous, but it's ours. And I wouldn't trade it for anything. If someone had dropped in on our life on any given weekday, they probably wouldn't have seen anything extraordinary. Just a regular couple in their 30s, raising 2 kids, managing a mortgage, and trying to get enough sleep. But to me, those small, unnoticed moments were everything. My days started early. I usually beat the sun out of bed, sneaking into the kitchen to get the coffee going before the chaos kicked in. Lily wasn't much of a morning person, but she'd shuffle an eventually messy bun, hoodie, still half asleep, and give me that slow, sleepy smile. We had a rhythm. I handled breakfast, she handled clothes and backpacks. Then I'd take Ellie to school while Lily dropped Jake off at daycare. After that, our paths mostly split until evening. I worked downtown in a small architecture firm I'd helped start with a couple of college friends. We weren't designing skyscrapers, but we'd carved out a niche in residential projects and small community buildings. I liked the hands-on aspect of it, seeing something go from paper to brick and beam. I took pride in it, even when the hours ran long. Lily, on the other hand, worked from home editing academic articles. It suited her. She was always meticulous, the kind of person who noticed every comma, every tense shift. I sometimes joked that she could spot a typo from across the room. But more than the work, I think she liked the flexibility it gave her. She could volunteer at the school library, pick Jake up early if he had a rough day, or just have quiet afternoons when the house was finally still. Evenings were a whirlwind. Homework, dinner, bath time. On paper it sounds mundane, but in reality, it was a kind of beautiful mess. Jake always refused to eat anything green unless it was in the shape of a dinosaur. Ellie had an ever-growing collection of facts she picked up at school and shared with great seriousness, like how sharks have been around longer than trees. Lily and I would exchange amused glances across the table, often too tired to say much but still in sync in that unspoken way long-term couples sometimes are. After the kids were down, we'd have our little pocket of calm. Most nights we just curled up on the couch and watched whatever show we were half invested in. Sometimes we talked about the kids, about bills, about whether we were doing enough or too much. Sometimes we didn't say anything at all, and that was okay too. The silence was never uncomfortable. It was more like a shared breath. On weekends, we tried to slow things down. Lily liked planning family outings, trips to the zoo, nature trails, a new museum exhibit. I was more of a homebody, but I loved seeing the kids wide-eyed with wonder, and Lily lit up when they were happy. She had this way of creating moments that stuck, the kind of memories that settled deep in your bones. We weren't flashy or dramatic. We didn't throw big parties or take exotic trips. But I used to look at our life and think, this is it. This is what people mean when they say they're content. I loved her. I loved our kids. I loved the life we built with our bare hands, slowly, brick by brick, over the course of a decade. At that time, I couldn't imagine anything changing. I've always believed that when you love someone, really love them, you give. Not just in the romantic sense, flowers, dinners, compliments, but in the quiet, enduring way that builds a life. You give your time, your energy, your trust. And sometimes, you give the things you worked hard for, simply because you want to make life easier for the people you love. About a year ago, Lily's car started acting up. It wasn't ancient, but it had been giving us trouble, weird noises, sluggish acceleration, the occasional refusal to start on cold mornings. I knew she was getting tired of dealing with it. It stressed her out, especially with all the back and forth to school and daycare and errands. She never asked for anything, not really, but I saw it in the way she gripped the steering wheel tighter every time she turned the key. So, one Saturday afternoon while the kids were at a birthday party, I drove her to the dealership. She looked confused at first. "What are we doing here?" "You need something more reliable," I said. "Something safer." and something that makes your life a little easier. Lily stared at me for a second, trying to read my face. Are you serious? I nodded. Completely. I let her pick the car. She chose something practical. A newer crossover SUV with good mileage and enough space for all the kid stuff. She cried a little when we signed the paperwork. Not a dramatic outburst, just a quiet tear she tried to wipe away before I noticed. I pretended not to, just kissed her temple, and said, "You deserve it." That same month, we enrolled Ellie in a private school nearby. It wasn't cheap, but Lily had done the research, toured the campus, and met the teachers. She said it was exactly what Ellie needed. More creative programs, smaller class sizes, a school that didn't just teach kids, but nurtured them. I didn't need convincing. If Lily said it was the right move, I was on board. We also signed Jake up for a Montessori preschool. It felt like a leap, money-wise, but I figured it was a smart investment. These were our kids. We weren't going to cut corners on their future. I took on a few extra freelance consulting projects to help cover the new expenses. It meant longer nights, a little less rest, but I didn't mind. Lily seemed lighter during that stretch. Happier, even. She had more energy, more bounce in her step. She started going out more, book club, yoga, the occasional girls' night. I thought it was good for her. She'd spent so many years wrapped up in the kids, the house, us. She deserved her own space, her own time. I encouraged it. I watched her drive off in that new car and felt proud that I could provide something that made her life better. Looking back now, I realize how blind I was. But at the time, I wasn't watching for cracks. I wasn't looking for signs. I was just a husband doing what husbands are supposed to do, giving his all to the life he believed in. And I really did believe in it. Every part of it. You ever get that feeling when you walk into a room and forget why you came in? You stand there, looking around, confused, but you know something's off. You just can't put your finger on it. That's the only way I can describe how things started to shift between Lily and me. It wasn't sudden. It wasn't dramatic. It was quiet. Subtle. Like the background music in a film getting slower without you noticing until it's practically humming under your skin. At first, I chalked it up to the usual ebb and flow of a long-term relationship. I was working longer hours again. More side projects, late-night drafting, client emails bleeding into dinner. Lily, on her end, had taken on more school volunteer work and had started attending these weekend wellness retreats with a few of the moms from Ellie's school. I thought it was good for her. She looked refreshed when she came back. Happy even. But after a while, the timing started to feel strange. She used to check in when she was out. Just a casual, "Hey, heading back," or a "Want me to grab anything?" She didn't do that anymore. I'd be at home with the kids and realize it was nearly 9 p.m. and she still wasn't back. No text. No call. I'd shoot her a message and get a reply 10, 15 minutes later. "Sorry. Lost track of time. Phone was on silent. Love you." And I believed her. I did. But that feeling, that strange, disconnected sense of something being off, it lingered. Conversations between us got thinner. Not colder, just shallower. She'd ask about my day, but it felt like her mind was already somewhere else. I'd answer, she'd nod, then drift off into her phone. Not in a distant or cruel way, but in that distracted way people get when they're mentally juggling something else. The kids didn't seem to notice anything. Jake still climbed into her lap every chance he got, and Ellie still went to her for help with school projects. Lily was present, attentive, and still that deeply loving mother she'd always been. But with me, something was missing. There was a night, random Wednesday. I made us her favorite dinner, just because. I even lit a candle and dimmed the lights, hoping to surprise her. When she got home, she smiled, hugged me, said it looked amazing. But she didn't sit down. She stood at the kitchen counter, scrolling through her phone while picking at the edge of her napkin. "I'm not super hungry," she said. "We had a big lunch at the retreat." I remember watching her, thinking, she looks tired. But it wasn't physical. It was something else, something I didn't know how to name. We ate together anyway, made small talk, and she kissed me goodnight like she always did. But it felt automatic, like muscle memory. I didn't bring any of this up. What would I even say? "You seem a little off?" It felt petty. And honestly, I didn't want to sound insecure. I figured maybe it was just a phase, something internal she was going through. Burnout. Stress. Hormones. I even thought maybe she was just tired of the routine. But still, something in my gut kept tugging at me. Not fear. Not even suspicion. Just this low, persistent hum of unease. I told myself all couples go through stretches like this. And I believe that. Mostly. It's strange how you can live alongside someone, eat breakfast with them, fold their laundry, fall asleep beside them, and still feel like something's slipping between your fingers. By most appearances, Lily and I were fine. The kids were thriving. Ellie was writing stories at school that her teacher called surprisingly mature, and Jake had learned to ride his bike without training wheels. Lily was still volunteering, still going to her wellness retreats, still managing the house like a pro. From the outside looking in, we were a well-oiled machine. But I started to feel like a passenger in my own life. It showed up in the silences. Not the peaceful ones we used to share, like reading together on the couch or watching the kids play. These were different. Heavier. Like there was something just beneath the surface we weren't acknowledging. Sometimes I'd walk into a room, and she'd flinch slightly, like I startled her. Once, I came into the kitchen, and she quickly flipped her phone face down on the counter. Not a big move. Just a flick of the wrist. But it stuck in my brain longer than it should have. She wasn't doing anything wrong, at least, not that I could point to. But she had become more private in small, unfamiliar ways. Passwords changed. Notifications silenced. The phone always kept screen side down. I didn't snoop. I never had. We'd always had mutual trust, and I wasn't about to violate that over a hunch. Still, I'd be lying if I said I didn't notice. Then there was the trip. A 2-day yoga retreat an hour out of town. She was excited about it, and I encouraged her to go. I even took a half-day off work to handle the kids so she could leave early and unplug. That's exactly the word she used. I just need to unplug for a bit. I helped her pack. Made sure the gas tank was full. She kissed me goodbye and said, "I'll call you tonight, okay?" But she didn't. I waited until 10:30, then texted. No reply. I figured maybe she'd fallen asleep early or was off-grid like she said. But still. I kept checking the phone. I even woke up at 2 a.m. and checked again, like some restless part of me was waiting for something that never came. She called the next morning around 9, sounding cheerful, relaxed, like nothing was out of the ordinary. "Sorry," she said. "We did this group meditation thing and turned our phones off. I didn't even realize how late it got." I told her it was fine. And I meant it, kind of. But something about that call didn't sit right. Maybe it was how upbeat she was. Maybe it was how clean the excuse sounded. Or maybe it was just me, overthinking, reading into nothing. That was becoming a habit lately. I didn't tell anyone what I was feeling. Not even my brother, who usually picks up on things before I do. I didn't want to put anything into words. Saying it out loud would make it real, and I wasn't ready for that. Because deep down, I still believed in her. I still believed in us. But I was starting to feel like I was standing on a shoreline watching the tide pull back, not sure if it was going to crash back gently or drown me. I don't remember exactly when the thought first crossed my mind. That's probably how it always starts. With a passing flicker of doubt you immediately push away, embarrassed by the very existence of it. But once it enters your head, it lingers. It waits. And eventually, it asks to be taken seriously. It wasn't something dramatic. I didn't stumble on a message or overhear a phone call. No suspicious photos or lipstick-stained collars. Just a moment, maybe in the mirror, maybe at breakfast, where I looked at Jake and then looked at myself and felt something unfamiliar. A hesitation. It was nothing obvious, just the faintest itch of a thought. The kind you don't speak out loud because doing so makes you feel like a terrible person. Like a paranoid husband. Like a man who doesn't trust the family he built with his own hands. But I couldn't ignore it. Not entirely. It wasn't that Jake didn't look like me. People said all the time that he had my energy, my stubbornness, my laugh, even my walk. And Ellie had Lily's eyes, her long fingers, her way of tilting her head when she was thinking. These were our children. I never questioned it. Until, slowly, I started to. I felt like I was betraying them just by wondering. But that wondering wouldn't stop. It didn't scream, it whispered. It whispered late at night when I couldn't sleep. It whispered when Jake smiled at me from the back seat. It whispered every time Lily brushed something off too quickly, or every time I caught her smiling at her phone when she thought I wasn't looking. I didn't go looking for answers right away. Honestly, I hated myself for even considering it. But I was tired of the doubt growing in the quiet. I told myself I wasn't doing this because I thought Lily had done something wrong. I was doing it for peace of mind. That's the phrase I clung to, peace of mind. I ordered the test online. Discreet. Private. I remember the way my hands shook when I opened the box. I waited until everyone was asleep, then swabbed the inside of Jake's cheek while he snored, limbs tangled in his blanket like he always did. He didn't stir. He trusted me. I almost stopped right then. I almost threw it away and told myself I was a fool, a bad father, a worse husband. But I sealed the envelope. I did the same with Ellie 2 nights later. I told myself if I was going to do this, really do this, it had to be all or nothing. I included my own samples, followed all the steps. I even triple-checked the instructions, because God forbid I got an inaccurate result and had to sit with that kind of uncertainty. Dropping the package off at the post office felt like slipping a confession into a church donation box. No one saw me. I didn't tell a soul. I went home, kissed Lily on the cheek, and read Jake a bedtime story. I even laughed at one of Ellie's knock-knock jokes over dinner. On the outside, I was the same husband, the same dad. But inside, I was somewhere else entirely, stuck in a limbo between trust and suspicion, love and fear. The results wouldn't come back for a couple of weeks. I figured I'd forget about it in the meantime. Life would keep moving, school drop-offs, meetings, dishes, movie nights. But I hadn't counted on how loud silence can be when it's filled with waiting. I didn't want to know anything that would change the way I saw my family. But something inside me already had. The email came on a Thursday afternoon. I was in the middle of reviewing plans for a community center remodel, something about HVAC logistics and insulation options. I wasn't thinking about the test. Honestly, I'd done a decent job of pushing it out of my mind. Life hadn't changed much since I sent the samples in. Jake still climbed into bed with us on Saturday mornings. Ellie still left her homework scattered across the living room like confetti. Lily still moved through our home with that quiet efficiency I used to admire so much. But when I saw the subject line, "Your DNA results are ready," my whole body went cold. I stared at it for almost 10 minutes before opening it. I told myself not to panic, that I was being ridiculous, that I had let some weird, anxious version of myself take over, that these doubts were nothing but ghosts. And then I clicked, and then I read, and then everything I knew about my life stopped making sense. Neither child matched, not even partially. No markers, no biological connection, zero probability of paternity. I read it 3 times, then a 4th, thinking maybe I was misinterpreting something, that I'd mixed up the samples, that there was some mistake at the lab. But it was all there, spelled out in sterile clinical language that didn't care whose life it was dissecting. Neither Ellie nor Jake were mine. I don't even know how long I sat at my desk. The room didn't feel real. The monitor, the blueprints, the coffee going lukewarm by my elbow, it all felt like it belonged to someone else. I couldn't move. I couldn't speak. My heart wasn't racing. It just felt heavy, like it had sunk to the bottom of my chest and refused to float back up. I thought about Jake's laugh, about Ellie's drawings taped to the fridge, about Lily's smile that morning when she kissed me goodbye and asked if I could pick up more almond milk on the way home. And then I thought, what else don't I know? It wasn't just about biology. This wasn't a bloodline thing. This was trust. This was the foundation of everything I'd built for over a decade, our marriage, our home, our family, and realizing, in one instant, that I had been building it on a lie. I didn't scream. I didn't throw anything. I just sat there in silence, with the weight of something I hadn't prepared for pressing into my spine. The test didn't tell me who. It didn't tell me when. But it told me what I needed to know, that somewhere along the way, Lily made a decision I had no part in, no awareness of, and that decision changed everything. And the worst part? I still had to go home. I still had to walk through that front door, past the shoes by the mat and the coat rack she picked out. I had to look my kids in the eye, knowing they weren't mine, but feeling like they always would be. I had to sit at the dinner table and pretend I didn't know that my life had just cracked open from the inside. But I did go home. I smiled when they hugged me. I nodded along when Lily told me about her day. I folded into the lie a little longer, just enough to gather myself, because the truth wasn't going to stay buried much longer. And the woman I thought I knew, I was about to find out who she really was. I didn't explode the same day I got the results. I wanted to, but something inside me held back, not out of mercy, not even out of confusion. It was control. A cold, shaking kind of control. I knew if I confronted her in the heat of it, I'd come undone. And I didn't want her to see me broken. I wanted her to see me clear, focused, unflinching. So I waited. One day. Just one. And in that 24 hours, I went through every room in our house and saw things I had never noticed before. The little cracks. The places where she had slowly slipped away from me. Her second phone charger in the drawer she never let me open. That unfamiliar hoodie in the laundry I'd brushed off as something she picked up at a PDA fundraiser. The way her eyes used to drift when I asked about her day, how she smiled at the kids, but not at me. I saw it all now, framed by the truth like shattered glass catching light. I wasn't blind. I was just willing to look away for too long. The next evening, after dinner, I asked her to sit down with me in the living room. The kids were watching a movie upstairs. She looked at me with this casual curiosity, like I was going to ask her about groceries or weekend plans. I told her I had something important to share. When I said the word DNA, her face shifted, not in confusion, not in fear, but in the sudden silence of someone who knows the game is up. She didn't say a word when I told her, not even a denial. Just a widening of her eyes and the slow collapse of the mask she'd been wearing for years. She tried to open her mouth, maybe to explain, maybe to lie, but I held up a hand and told her not to. I said I wasn't interested in the details. I didn't care how long it had been going on, or with who. I didn't want a timeline, or confessions, or tears. I didn't want her regret. I wanted her gone. When I told her to leave, she looked stunned. Like she truly hadn't imagined I'd follow through. Like the betrayal wasn't real until it cost her something. She tried to appeal to my heart, tried to talk about the children, about their smiles, their routines, their lives. But that's exactly what made it worse. She had wrapped those children in my name, my time, my love, knowing full well they weren't mine. She'd handed me a lie, let me raise it, protect it, fund it, and call it family. And I did, with everything I had. I told her to pack her things that night. No arguing, no discussions. She begged. She actually begged. The same woman who had been cold, distant, distracted for months was now sobbing on her knees on the floor, asking for a second chance. It was like watching a stranger pretend to be someone I once knew. I told her the car was no longer hers, it was in my name, and she could leave the keys on the counter. I told her the tuition payments for both kids were over, that she would need to figure it out, that I was done financing the life she built on deception. And the kids. God, that was the hardest part. I didn't scream at them. I didn't even raise my voice. I just told them that there were going to be some changes, that their mom would explain everything, and that I loved them, but I needed some space. I didn't say they weren't mine. I couldn't. They looked at me with those trusting little eyes, and all I could think about was how much of myself I had poured into them, and how none of it had ever been enough for her. I left the house that night and stayed with my brother. Told him everything. He didn't say much. Just sat there with me for a long time, handed me a beer, and said, "Whatever you need. I've got you." She called the next day, over and over, left voicemails, sent long emails. I didn't read them. I didn't answer. I didn't care if she was sorry. Sorry doesn't unlie 10 years of deceit. Sorry doesn't unraise 2 kids under false pretenses. Sorry doesn't put the pieces back. She has no car now. No money from me. No tuition payments. No house. I've filed the paperwork, changed the locks, canceled the shared accounts. I stripped the life she built with my help down to the bones. I didn't do it out of spite. I did it out of survival. Because I realized that the life I thought was mine had never really been mine at all. And I will never, ever let someone do that to me again. It's a strange thing, starting over, not just practically, but emotionally. Waking up in a new space, hearing different sounds, seeing different light filter through the curtains. That first morning in my apartment felt almost sterile. Quiet in a way I hadn't felt in years. No tiny footsteps down the hall. No kettle whistling from the kitchen. No Lily. No chaos. Just me, a half-furnished living room, and the smell of new paint. And yet, it felt like air. Not freedom exactly, not yet, but the possibility of it. The weeks that followed weren't some dramatic transformation. I didn't go on some eat, pray, love journey, or start lifting weights like a man half my age. Mostly, I worked. I kept my head down. I put one foot in front of the other. I saw a therapist twice a week and said things out loud I hadn't ever admitted to myself before, like how much it hurt to be erased from the story I thought I was writing. How foolish I felt for loving someone who had been living a double life while I was busy buying almond milk and making science project volcanoes. How confused I still was about the kids, how I missed them, how I didn't know what to do with all the love I still felt. The silence that followed me everywhere slowly became less punishing. I started noticing the little things again, the smell of coffee, the sound of rain at night, the stretch of my back when I woke up early and took a walk before the city came alive. And then, about 6 weeks into my new life, I met someone. Not in some dramatic or romantic way. She was a barista at the cafe near my office. Her name was Mia. We started with small talk, weather, Books, the kinds of conversations you forget 5 minutes later. But over time, it built. She had this quiet way of asking questions that didn't feel invasive. She was calm, grounded, unpretentious. There was no spark, not at first. Just presence. And after everything I'd been through, presence felt like the most beautiful thing in the world. I didn't tell her the full story right away. Just that I was divorced, and it had been rough. She didn't press. We went for coffee one weekend, then a walk through a nearby park. She told me about her dog who chews through couch legs, and her father who taught her to fix things instead of replacing them. I laughed more in that one conversation than I had in months. There's a slowness to it. A caution. I don't know what this is or where it's going, but it's real. And for now, that's enough. Lily's emails still come sometimes, less now. Shorter. Sometimes they're just empty lines, like she doesn't know what to say anymore. I haven't replied. I have nothing left to give her. I gave her everything, and she burned it all down. What's left now is mine. My quiet mornings. My half-decorated walls. My new favorite coffee shop. The freedom to breathe without wondering what else I don't know. And for the first time in a long time, I feel like I'm building a life that's real. Not perfect. Not painless. But honest. And after everything, that's all I really want. It's been nearly a year since I opened that email and watched my world fracture. Sometimes, it feels like a different life, like I've stepped out of someone else's story and started writing my own. Other times, it still stings in places I don't expect. A birthday. A movie Jake used to love. The smell of Lily's shampoo on someone passing by. The reminders come quietly, and less often now, but they still come. I haven't seen Lily since that night she left our home. Not in person. I haven't heard her voice. She stopped calling after a while, stopped emailing too. I think she realized, eventually, that the door had closed, not in anger, but in finality. I didn't slam it. I just let it stay shut. People ask if I ever got the full story, who the father was, how long it went on, whether she ever intended to come clean. The truth is, I didn't ask. Maybe part of me didn't want to know. The betrayal was already total. Knowing the details would have just deepened a wound that didn't need help bleeding. I didn't need timelines. I didn't need excuses. I just needed distance. And I have it now. The kids. I think about them a lot. And I miss them more than I'm able to say out loud. I helped raise them. I taught Ellie how to ride a bike. I sat up with Jake through fevers and bad dreams. I was their dad in every way that mattered, except for one. And that exception, it changed everything. I don't know what Lily has told them. Maybe one day they'll come find me, ask questions I'm not sure how to answer. If that day comes, I'll meet them with honesty, with kindness. I still love them. I just can't live inside the lie that brought them to me. As for me, I'm still figuring it out. The apartment feels like home now. I finally hung art on the walls, replaced the folding chairs with a real couch, even got a dog. His name is Finn, and he's chewed through 2 pairs of my sneakers, but he's loyal in a way that cuts through the noise. I still see Mia. It's quiet. Simple. We don't talk about forever. We just enjoy now. And honestly, after what I've been through, now feels like a gift. I look back sometimes, not to punish myself, but to remember, to make peace with the man I was, trusting, hopeful, blind in a way only love makes possible. I don't hate that man. He tried. He gave everything. He just gave it to someone who didn't deserve it. There's this line I heard once. You can love someone and still choose to say goodbye. That stuck with me, because it's not always about anger. Sometimes it's about choosing yourself, about survival, about refusing to live in a house built on sand and pretending it's solid ground. I didn't get the life I thought I was building, but I'm building a new one now. And this one, this life, is mine. No lies, no shadows, just me, walking forward, a little scarred, a little wiser, but still standing. And for the first time in a long, long time, that's enough.